And welcome to God Hour Live and continuing my own personal study of the book of Isaiah and sharing with anybody that wants to perhaps try to gain some of their or offer some of their insight, uh, which is kind of the essence of Christianity is to have fellowship. Uh, a Sunday morning uh, is for worship. Going to church, I should say, is for worship. Bible study uh, is for fellowship, discussion of the Bible, and often it's very hard to meet schedules to do either. Uh, but that doesn't restrict your ability to study the Word, because you can do that at any time, or worship the Lord. You can do that at any time. And for that matter, you can take whatever day off you have and give that day to the Lord as the Sabbath to remember Him and keep that day holy. Time isn't something that has control over God. It's quite the reverse. Um, that being said, here's our standard disclaimer. I'm not a preacher or anything like that. I'm just a guy, a Christian, a sinner from Alabama. If that wasn't obvious from the accent. In any case, I've been reading through the book of Isaiah. We're up to chapter 15, which is very short, actually, only 9 verses. And I'm going to be cold reading. I'm skimming a bit here, but cold read, kind of examine things aloud as I go. The general formula. And so let's go ahead and do that. Isaiah chapter 15, verse 1, King James Version, as is my wont. The burden of Moab, which is not the mother of all bombs, but I'm pretty sure that they call that ordinance Moab to kind of play on the words in the Bible. I don't know that for a fact, but uh, I guess that's getting off topic. The burden of Moab, because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Now, I don't know who or what Ar is, A-R, but maybe you can figure it out from context. Because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He has gone up to Bajith and to Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba. All their heads shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. Now, these names mean very little to me personally. Uh, I could not tell you who Ar is. I could not give you a good definition of Moab. Kir, Bajith, Dibon, Medeba, Nebo. All of these are things that require further examination and study, at least for me. Uh, I would gladly listen to anybody that has any insight on these names, but to me they're just names at this point. It's not to say I'm not going to do a little more research. Um, Specifically, I'm not sure if a lot of these names are places or people, because in the night, Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Makes me think, from context, that Moab is a nation or country, or however they would refer to it back then, comprised of smaller uh, provinces or just cities such as Ar, Kir, um, but go on to verse 2, he is gone up to Bajith and to Devon. Kind of makes me think Moab is a person, but you see this kind of stuff a lot, especially in the Old Testament, and that's why the Old Testament is so daunting, at least to me, for to study. And as Christians, it's often more or less disregarded, and I think that's a fallacy. There's plenty of wisdom to be gleaned from the Old Testament. It's like reading or watching a sequel without watching the original. Christianity builds on the Old Testament in the form of the New Testament. Bible Part 2, if you will. On all their heads shall be baldness and every beard cut off. Now that I can understand as a way of mourning and grief. And many cultures, it's typical to show grief and mourning by rending of garments, shaving of hair. It's also a sign of dishonor. So Moab shall howl over Nebos. Again, makes me think it's a country and or nation. On all the citizens' heads shall be baldness and every beard cut off. Verse 3, in their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. On the tops of their houses and in their streets everyone shall howl, weeping abundantly. That's again the sackcloth. So like a penance. They're showing penance. They're trying to atone. That's what I'm gathering from that. Sackcloth is a very uncomfortable fabric. Think about croaker sacks. If anybody remembers what a croaker sack is, think about wearing a shirt made out of that material, how uncomfortable it would be. Hey, everybody, Samuel, and no one is okay. Amen to your statement, no one. That is indeed a summary of Christianity. And howdy to Brazil, Samuel of Brazil. Had a few of your countrymen come into my shop, or the shop I work at, recently for football, as y'all call it there, but soccer, as we call it here. Anyway, moving along to verse 4. And Heshbon shall cry, and Eliela. Let's go with that. Eliela. Something like that. Eliah. Their voice shall be heard even unto Jahaz, Jahaz. Therefore the armed soldiers of Moab shall cry out, his life shall be grievous unto him. Still, Moab could be a person or a geographical thing. Is but he's clearly a leader if he's a person. And I suppose it kind of amounts to the same thing if you're a common man, whether you're fighting for your king or your country, you're fighting for the same thing. Verse 5, my heart shall cry out for Moab, his fugitives shall flee unto Zoar, an heifer, which is to say a heifer, a cow, of 3 years old, Zoar, a heifer of 3 years old. For by the mounting up of Luhith, with weeping shall they go it up, for in the way of Horonaim they shall raise up a cry of destruction. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. Yeah, I appreciate that, Vegan. And I invite you to help me make sense of this chapter of Isaiah, particularly if you have some insight into Moab. I keep seeing the pronoun he being used of Moab, but I'm still not certain if Moab is a nation or person. There's a lot of times nations are given pronouns, he or she, like Mother Russia. In any case, Nimrim is another. Now that one's clearly a geographical thing. Shall be desolate, the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. Verse 7, therefore the abundance they have gotten, and that which they have laid up, shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. For the cry is gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, and the howling thereof unto Berelim. For the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood, for I will bring more upon Dimon, lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. Now, it is indeed a short chapter, only 9 verses, but there's a lot going on here that for a Christian who's primarily been focused on the New Testament his whole life, much to my sorrow, I guess, a lot of this is new, and maybe the only way I'm going to find out more about this is to research each one of these names independently. But it seems like all of these are actually locations. The burden of Moab is how this chapter started out. The very first verse, the burden of Moab. Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Utter destruction of the city of Ar, which is in the province or nation of Moab, presumably. This is just some guy reading and deciphering and discerning. Because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He is going up to Baji and to Dibon. We get that, no, excuse me, later on that's Dimon, D-I-M-O-N, not demon, but Dibon, Dimon, The waters of Dibon shall be full of blood. But Dibon and Bajith are the high places. That much I can interpret just from the clarification. He has gone up to Bajith and to Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab seems to also be a person. It's very... No, I'm not high. It's very misleading. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more so-called research by using Google. And I don't like doing research with Google. I don't trust it. I don't trust AI. In the Bible, Moab refers to both the historical kingdom located in modern-day Jordan, east of the Dead Sea, and the people who lived there. Moabites were descended from Lot and played a significant role in biblical history as both rivals and ancestors to the Israelites. Well, I have no reason to question that definition of Moab. I think AI's probably got that correct from its perusal of the Bible. But AI doesn't know how to pray, talk to God, I don't think. But now, according to Genesis 19, the Moabites originated from Lot. Yeah, we just said that. The eldest daughter named her son Moab, which means from my father. So Moab would have been one of Lot's granddaughters. If I'm reading that right. Because after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's daughters, believing they were the last people left on earth, oh gosh. Both his granddaughter and daughter. It was the most polite way of saying, or grandson and son via his daughter. That's, wow. I mean, I guess if everybody you knew in the entire planet, as far as you could tell, was gone, you'd see it as your duty to repopulate the earth through whatever means necessary, but I don't know that I would go that far. Anyway, that's Google and that's AI, and I'm staying away from that. Other than letting it affirm my suspicion that there's both a Moab the man and a Moab the nation. Because when you think of a burden, you don't think of a burden as something a nation carries, but it often does. I mean, here in America, we carry the burden of slavery from our past. The Germans carried the burden of the Holocaust. And to this very day, in America, white people are demonized for the sins of their fathers, just as many Germans are demonized for the sins of their fathers. And even in Scripture, it talks of the sins of the fathers being visited upon the sons. So, that's cause for reflection. Like, if our fathers or ancestors did something wrong, how much responsibility do we carry as descendants to make it right? At what point can we be free of the sins of our fathers and grandfathers? Is it one generation? or is it for every generation until it is changed, until the cycle is broken? That seems more accurate to me. Uh, I don't, you know, I don't know if any of my ancestors owned slaves or were slaves. I don't think it's relevant to me. Uh, but the direct descendants of the slave owners, I do think they would have held some responsibility to correct their father's mistakes. Uh, but now that we've gotten generation and generation past that, I don't see how that's, still a relevant topic. In any case, 9 verses and that much confusion, that in itself is pretty remarkable. Now, I suppose most of it lies in all these proper nouns: Moab, Ar, Kir, Bajith, Dibon, Nebo, Medeba, Eliela, Zoar, Luhith, Horonaim, Nimrim, Eglaim, Berilim, Dimon. I think that, and Jahaz, if I didn't say that one yet. That is why we fell asleep in church as children, hearing all of these things that we didn't know anything about. That does it. I got to get myself a study Bible, King James Version study Bible, to reference all of these terms that are otherwise distracting from the message. Because the whole message of this chapter I hear is they will be grieving and mourning and trying to atone, doing penance in all of these places. In any case, I thought that was going to be an easy chapter. This is not an easy book, mind you. And, of course, that's why I put it off for so long. I procrastinate. Like anybody, got my faults. Now, Isaiah 16, if we're going to endeavor to do that today, it's also a short chapter. But even still, I'm already seeing room for misinterpretation of Moab as either a person or a place. Therefore, shall Moab howl for Moab? Okay, I'm going to read through it. Isaiah 16, verse 1. Send ye the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah to the wilderness, unto the mount of the daughter of Zion. For it shall be that as a wandering bird cast out of the nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make thy shadow as the night in the midst of the noonday. Hide the outcast, bewray not him that wandereth. Let mine outcast dwell with thee, Moab. Be thou a covert to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end, the spoiler ceaseth, the oppressors are consumed out of the land. And in mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment and hasting righteousness. Now we're starting to get into more New Testament prophecy type stuff. Tabernacle of David, the house of David. I'm hearing Jesus. That will be judging and seeking judgment and hastening righteousness, promoting righteousness. Because judgment is a misunderstood word, or misused word, I should say, not misunderstood, but judgment simply means balancing or making right. But we use it often in the pejorative sense of judging others as to, criticize, find fault in others, tell others how to live their lives. But it says in the Bible that the Lord loveth judgment, loves justice, which is probably a better way of saying judgment, at least in today's modern society. That automatically get that negative connotation from the word judgment. Don't judge me. If we actually hire or appoint or vote for judges to judge us, to restore justice. Anyway, in mercy shall the throne be established, as I was reading. That's verse 5, Isaiah 16. In mercy shall the throne be established. The throne that Christ, Jesus, shall occupy, and sit upon it, and to rule in judgment and seeking judgment and promoting righteousness and making righteousness. Hasting is also another, it's a Middle English word. Verse 6, we have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud, even of his haughtiness and his pride and his wrath. But his lies shall not be so. He is very proud, even of his pride. It's got a beautiful literary flair to it. Therefore shall Moab howl for Moab. Every one shall howl. For the foundation of Kir-hareseth shall ye mourn. Surely they are stricken. For the fields of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Sibmah. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants thereof. They are come even unto Jazer. They wandered through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out. They are gone over the sea. Verse 9, there's a little bit there that beckons me, if you will. Moab does not seem to be a very light person. He seems to be a powerful person, but dangerous, and will be judged in the sense of brought to justice. Certainly I've got my own homework to do on Moab. In any case, the fields of Heshbon languish, meaning they just sit there and nobody's tending the fields, and the vine of Sibmah languishing as well. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants thereof. They are come even unto Jazer, which I don't know what that is, or where that is. and stretched their branches across even the sea, going over the sea, across the world. Verse 9, therefore I will be well with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sibmah. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon and Elealeh, for the shouting for thy summer fruits and for thy harvest is fallen. Sounds like a lot of this is personification of geography. Like I was saying with the Mother Russia is giving a sense of consciousness or anthropomorphication of all these cities. Even gendering them. Some are female, some are male. In verse 10, and gladness is taken away, and joy out of the plentiful field. And in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. The treaders shall tread out no wine in their presses. I have made their vintage shouting to cease. Wherefore my bowels shall sound like an harp for Moab, and mine inward parts for Kirharesh. And it shall come to pass, when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he shall come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. My bowels shall sound like an harp, like a harp. If you're from Alabama, you would say a harp. If you're from Great Britain, you would probably say an harp. In any case, my bowels shall sound like a harp for Moab, my inward parts for Kirharesh. I don't want to get too vulgar with interpretations of it, but we don't associate the vowels of making sounds as pleasant as a harp, generally speaking. But for Moab, he will. That's not to say, now assuming that this is the Lord talking, or, Isaiah being a prophet, giving message of God, from God, even before Christ. Wherefore my bowels shall sound to Moab as if they were a harp, kind of modernizing it is what I believe that it is sounding. It is saying, because this Middle English stuff is hard to dissect a lot of times. And it shall come to pass, when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he shall come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. Is he going to fail to pray? Or does that just simply mean his prayers are not going to be answered? I think it means the latter. Unless he's not even going to make it to the sanctuary, because this is prophecy, remember. And we'll just have to see how it comes to pass that with Moab, and in the duration, the interim, I'm going to do my own study of Moab. In fact, I'm going to go see if I can't find a study Bible for the King James Version today. Verse 13, to finish off Isaiah 16. This is the word that the Lord hath spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now the Lord hath spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the years of an hireling, and the glory of Moab shall be contemned with all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be very small and feeble. And from context, 3 years must have been a standard that you would bring on a hireling, contract laborer, so to speak. That wraps up 16. My own wisdom falls short when it pertains to the book of Isaiah. And that is why we needed, not right now, not on camera, but that's why I need to pray over a lot of this material and seek further enlightenment. And I don't feel comfortable doing that by referring to a New Living Translation or anything like that, because I feel like that may just be some other person's interpretation of it. Which is also to say that the way I'm interpreting it and sharing it is due to the same, or subject to the same scrutiny that I'm giving the other translations. I invite dissenting and agreeing opinions, or any rational arguments to any of the deductions that I've arrived at, in that, in particular, Moab must be a person. Must be this Moab that was the grandson / son of Lot by Lot's daughter. Well, alrighty then. Now, I did say I wanted to talk about charity and love a little bit, and that is because the God hour short for today was in 1 Corinthians 13:7, which I very, very clearly remember saying, "Love beareth all things," as a young child. But when I looked at it today, it said, Paul's message said nothing of love, quote, love. It said charity in every use of the word. Love that I was remembering, charity was used instead. And since this was well over 30 years ago, there was no NLT or ESV. There's only King James Version. Every Bible I've ever looked at as a kid was King James Version. So, charity versus love, what's the difference? And I reached out to a pastor about some of this, and he told me that charity is love in action. It's a very good, short way of answering my question for him. And I appreciate that bit of wisdom. So, love is not always charity, but charity is always love. At least if it's genuine charity. But love seems to be a spectrum. And that word spectrum it's become so popular to put everything in a spectrum and pretend like that makes us understand it easier, better. But love, I do think, could be called a spectrum. Obviously, romantic love is the type of love on that spectrum. Unconditional love, like for your children, perhaps even for your parents. I don't know. I can't speak for people and their parents. But despite the things that, one of my parents did that weren't the nicest things, still have unconditional love from my father. Now, my mother's There's nothing not to love about her. Uh, so unconditional love, romantic love, charity, love for, what is charity exactly? It's love in action, according to Pastor. But love for those that are in need, I guess, is what you would call charity. What kind of love charity is. We have brotherly love. We have patriotic love, love for our country, or even tribal love, love first for our immediate family, and our extended family, then our city, county, state, nation, ultimately our planet. I mean, I like to think if we were invaded by some alien species that we would put aside our own little wars and spats like brothers would do in the face of a common threat, someone from outside the family. You know, family's going to stand up for itself despite their beefs with each other. Certainly experienced that with my own family. And I suppose that's really all I had to kind of lay down about charity and love. That there's a strong relationship between the two. But using the word charity, it's not interchangeable, but that's all in the God Hour Short. If you want to check that out, go right ahead. It's got a few good quotes in there as well, secular quotes, mind you. But with that said, there's 2 chapters of Isaiah and a little bit of discussion on love and charity. But I've got more questions than when I started, at least when it pertains to Isaiah. I think it would do me great benefit to get a hard copy King James Version study Bible today. I think I'm going to go do that right now, or at least do my best to find one. Books are becoming more and more rare. Thank you all if you've been here paying attention to this idiot reading and discussing things essentially with himself. God bless you all, and be seeing you soon, I do hope. Take care.